I don't get any feedback at all from my videos, but sometimes an innuendo comes my way that I'm being protected by not profiting. Obviously, a person who's been worked slave labored for 60 years isn't being protected when they're told they can't profit from their work, but they've murdered bystanders. That's their way of protecting me. And sometimes people may, if they have any sense, wonder why would anybody do this? Rather than having an educational system dedicated to teaching people what's necessary to survive on earth and prosper, because obviously the beauty and wonder of the landscape has been destroyed, but once upon a time it was bounteous. Why wouldn't they build their beautiful structures in a biosphere that was prosperous and help people come up empty? There's no explanation for it. Why would they have a government of the liars, by the liars, and for the liars? That's the only explanation, is that they like to lie. Pittsburgh, how they love to lie. And I don't understand it. Nobody's ever effectively even addressed the question of why. But a Trumpy Tune speechwriter, Adam Eisenstadt, whose close friend was a partner of the notorious museum thief whose gang tortured me and drove me out of Pittsburgh, said, conking out, all of the moral values. He said I was a soft-headed idealist writing fodder, anachronism from the refuges of an era, meaning the 60s or something, said, to the winners go the spoils, and wipes out all of the moral values, all of the. I mean, they got me in trouble by recklessly driving around a school bus. That's very symbolic. They stamped Don't know who on my father's obituary. That's very symbolic, because my father spent his whole life in public schools and building them as an intellectual philosopher of education, and then drove a school bus in his retirement. And the great hand of the University of Pittsburgh stabbed him in the back. You see in my research in storm warning, notice how Reagan holds his head from one side and says, well, I was out there in front for a while. And his hand changes locations to the front, and then bang, there I was flat on my can. Now you're going to remember this day for an awfully long time. And these brilliants absolutely deny I was out there in front for a while, and bang, I was flat on my can. Now you're going to remember this day for an awfully long time. That it conjures the thought of JFK. That's right. That's Joan Crawford, but Roe versus Wade, Henry Wade was the sheriff who framed Oswald. Monroe is like 50 cents of Monroe, Monty Monroe. And you wonder, I was terribly in love with Rosa. Why would a fellow artist, a fellow poet, somebody to whom I crawled for help. I hitchhiked all the way from Pittsburgh to St. Louis with $50 in my pocket as a nearly deaf, barely got out of high school graduate who had managed to pinnacle to straight A's in 11th grade and win the governor's school scholarship, only to be framed for armed robbery by the great dagger of Pittsburgh, by the back dagger of Pittsburgh. Why would some artist from England, supposedly a civilized country, chemically castrate someone who loved them? Why would they send in a haughty, perky haughty to fall in love with me? I fell in love with the girl. So they could blow away a neuroplastic implant that they knew was in there, that they put in there for their car sickness show, and then help Big Daddy Black Man invert the old images of D.W. Griffith. They have the whitey who's drooling this time, man, for the Green Party. That's what Donahue stood for. On the back, underneath it was said the German Green Party. And then they come prancing with a song and dance that they had all planned. What is that supposed to mean? I told them there was an AIDS testing experiment on Mount Desert, and these people were behind AIDS. And they said, no, son. And then they released the COVID bomb. Now, it appeared this guy was making films with Goebbels and got a job with the, making films after the war with people who defeated Goebbels, but he was obviously in cahoots with them from the time of the war already. So he had, some plans for how to go about working the post-war situation already. He ended up working with the East Germans because at the time the West Germans were concerned to try to stop the traffic of the murderers who were among us, but that changed pretty quick. And really, the Hollywood axis that came in the back door of Reagan's term of office was all set up with a super story at the Mellon franchise, who were notorious for funding Nazis. And they made a joke of the way that I was tortured. They made a joke, ha 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 ha, and this kind of stuff, and this kind of stuff. So you see that, so the supposed, if I had known that King Crimson was schmoozing with Colin Powell, I might have had some sense to be careful of them, but I didn't. This little number was when I was a child. Watmaker, who's named in the script, he's a neurological researcher. Oh, that's not suspicious. The great dagger pit in the back. That's not suspicious. Showed me this, but it also says something about the promised land because they took me to Yad Vashem. They took me to a slideshow of Yad Vashem, which is the Holocaust survivor memorial, So, and they're the ones that played King Crimson for me in the first place. And you see the semiotics of the Pussy Bowl war game they had going with Bobby Endel's crowd in Seattle. And it was all planned out by Hollywood, John Wayne was photographed with Oswald. And I'd made this little doozy about how the Reagan family pedophiled me as a child. And then Flippy, the character who chemically castrated your hero here, had Gail Burston, the author of the script, on one of his covers. And this is how they're protecting me. You don't profit, and we don't stick you with the virus, is what they're saying. That's what, and Victory and Revenge of Virginity and Rape Planning, you see, they had this all planned out. They were all sugary. And it goes back to Metropolis when they made the woman who had something to say into a robot, So you have to ask yourself, why would they even do it? Why would they hate the United States so badly that they would make a joke of the United States? And what's more is we seem to be unpardonably determined to elect the leader of this monstrosity. Some to the Republic, take over the Republican Party, the party of like get to this, get a grip. Really, try to get a grip. This was on Oswald's army idea. Nobody ever brings it up. None of these so-called Jefferson Morley brilliants ever bring up that the anniversary of Pearl Harbor was on his ID. Nobody ever brings it up. But it's central to the whole crime. Oswald Mosley was the name of the leader of the British Union of Fascists. You know, General Walker appears on a book, from 1962 by Colin Cross, called "The Fascists of Britain." And it's on the dust jacket. He's the most dangerous right winger in America. Yet he was the lead witness for the Warren Commission. He had just been arrested for threatening to kill Kennedy after making Life magazine for leading the bigots in a riot against the University of Mississippi, where Kennedy took in federal troops to escort James Meredith to class. And yet now he's the ringleader of this whole revenge attack, starring, no less, the NAACP, because Bobby Endo and those guys got in good with the Pussy Bowl operation. Yeah, the Licky Chops people had Presto Films and Queerbait as a little boy. He was having fun, they say. Biting my fingernails bloody, disappearing from school, pleading with people. That's what's so funny to Pittsburgh. The great Bagdagger, nothing makes them laugh like you crying, pleading for your life. Oh, they love that. To the winners go the spoils.